Okay, I'd like to invite our panellists for the next panel. It's a panel I'm really quite passionate about, so if you'd like to come and join the stage, panellists. This panel is going to be about addressing gender disparity in the telecoms industry. It's important to me. I'm a father of 2 daughters, neither of whom wanted to go into the family business of telecoms, I might add. So I'm really keen to do this session. What I'd like to do, just before lunch, obviously, energy levels are maybe dropping a bit. So can we get everyone to stand up, please? Everyone on your feet? Okay, and if all the men could now sit down for us. Okay, so this is probably a pretty good demonstration of maybe the challenge we're facing into. You can sit down now, thank you very much. So within the telecoms industry at the moment, we have a gender disparity problem, there's no doubt about that. In the most progressive market, which is the USA, 31% of senior leadership in telecoms organisations are women. That's just 31%. If you come into Europe, it's 20%. If you go elsewhere, we get into single-digit numbers. So we definitely have a challenge, but we want to discuss that challenge. We want to talk positively about that challenge. So let me introduce you to our panellists. Now they're all mic'd and sorted out. Let's start with Martina. If you could do a very short introduction to yourself, your organisation, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Martina. I am a founder of Telnus Group, so we're an MVNO targeting the SMB market in Sweden, as well as a software company to enable other MVNOs with our tech platform.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia. Normally I stand on this stage talking about eSIM. I did actually exactly on this stage do that 4 years ago. No one really thought it was going to be a big thing back then, but look at today when we had a full day on eSIM. I also founded an NGO focused on connecting 1 billion unconnected people to the internet in underserved areas across the world with a focus on students and women.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen McLean. I run 3 UK's sub-brand Smarty, which is a budget sub-brand launched about 6 years ago.
Thank you very much. So I guess the first thing to sort of explore, clearly you have been successful in your careers in the telecoms industry. So I think I'll go to Ellen first, if that's okay, Ellen. I'd just like to know, what is it that's helped you to succeed in your organisation? Were there role models that helped you? Were there any schemes that you could tap into? So maybe explain a little bit more about that for us.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this question actually after we discussed it, and a lot of the things that helped me succeed were actually quite personal. So just really reflecting, first of all, on my upbringing, and maybe this is something for the fathers in the room to think about, but I was brought up in a household where both of my parents were equally qualified. They were academics, both of them worked, and my father took equal share of caregiving in the household and also domestic tasks. So reflecting on that, I think that just made me assume that why wouldn't I have an equal chance to succeed as a man? It almost wasn't something that was in my consciousness. And also, now that I'm married and I have children, actually my home setup is quite unusual. So I believe 1 in 10 women are typically the main breadwinner in their household, and I am that in my household. But also we have a setup where my husband works part-time and he takes lots of those responsibilities. And quite interestingly, actually, almost 50% of those 1 in 10 women are also the main caregivers, so they take the majority of the burden when it comes to looking after the home or looking after the children. And I'm really lucky to have a marriage which is not set up like that. So really just in our own homes and the way that we live our lives, we can really influence how women can succeed and progress. So those are my very sort of homegrown reasons, but I think very, very impactful, and certainly proud to think that I'll be setting that example. I've got 2 daughters myself, so hopefully influencing them as they grow up.
Fantastic, thank you. Can we go to you, Mia? Just talk a little bit, I mean, because you work in the quite technical side as well, don't you, with eSIM and so on. So talk us through that, talk us through maybe, again, some of the things that have enabled you to progress your career, or maybe even some of the barriers that have stopped you progressing your career.
Got it. Well, I think the biggest reason why I'm where I'm at today is because I love the telecoms, I would say. Normally, if you're at a party and you don't want to talk about what you do at work, people say they work in telecom and they won't get any more questions. But I think that's probably what took me to where I am. I also have had the really great opportunity to work with strong women around me in the telecom industry. That's been somewhat of a role model. And there are many of them here today. You can see all the women standing out before. But I've also had the opportunity to work with really great male role models that when I had to go to a conference whilst I was still breastfeeding my son, they flew my husband with me so he can come and look after my son whilst I was doing presentations or having meetings. So in that sense, I've been really fortunate.
Okay. Martina, again, your technology background, you're fortunate because you run your own company, right? So you can address it from within. So interesting to explore some of those angles as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. And just to start, so I have an engineering background, and I worked at Telenor for many years before I founded Telnus. And I think everything is just like, when you are in the start of your career, everything is about having people believe in you, because you will be unexperienced, and it's about having people like leaders to lift you. And I think I've had the privilege to have had a lot of good leaders, both female and men, that just have pushed me to try out new things. And when you have that early on in your career, then you get in the states where you dare to take risk in your full career going forward. So I think that's been one of my things. I think now when founded Telnus, I think when you start a company, very many people do focus a lot on, obviously, how to build a product and what type of position you're going to have in the market from the product perspective. But me and my two co-founders, both male, we really had the vision to start like, what type of company are we going to build? Where equality was one of the foundations. I mean, we're in a commodity service. Our end users is going to be 50% men and women. So we need to have, a company and a culture that can be diverse enough to address the full segment. And that has been actually not me pushing that internally. It's been one of my co-founders that had that as the guiding star, and that has been very inspiring for me.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think that's a really interesting point as well, isn't it? Do you think it's easier to change in a startup versus a large corporation? Because we've got both represented here, right? Ellen's in a fairly large corporation. You've been in a large corporation, then done your own startup. Do you think it is easier to make the change in the smaller company?
Yes. I don't think many focus on it and use the benefits of doing it from start, though. But I mean, everything when we hire people, like if you're 4 people, 5 people, you can be a diverse team, not only in gender, but a lot of other stuff. And obviously, it's much easier because you don't need to do a transformation. You can just try to get like what is actually going to take us to success, and how do we create a diverse team, and then nothing will be the standards. It will be one of each if you're 10 people. And I think that has been, now we're 50 plus people in the group, and we are 50-50 women and men, and are representing a really diverse team in everything from engineering and dev team. And that has now become like a really attractive workplace for people that in all of their previous jobs have been the only woman. And now they can be in a team where they're not anymore. And that's been like when you found a company, and when you're early on your journey, everything is about the people, and you don't have the highest salary in the world. You have to be good, of course, but that will not be your USP. And now we've really managed to attract really, really, really good people because they want to work in the culture and the company we've built, and that's success for me.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really interesting point as well, isn't it? Because it's about the skills that people bring. And I'd maybe bring Ellen in here, because obviously you've got a large corporate organisation you work for. Is it different? How, are there things being done in 3 that can, that are actively trying to address this?
Yeah, there's lots of focus on this at 3 actually, and I do think it's more difficult in a larger organisation, but actually the basics of everything is to walk the walk. So it's easy for me to talk about the policies that 3 have, or how we're trying to drive change, but actually it's just trying to make sure that these things are not just words on a piece of paper. So a few interesting examples of changes that we're trying to drive at 3. First of all, actually in attraction. So I read a stat recently that women, when looking at a job ad, will apply if they have 100% of what's asked for. Men will apply if they have 60%. So that means that women apply for less roles and are put off more by roles which maybe have screeds and screeds of requirements. So, the first tip is to keep that really simple, to pare that back and make sure that we're not putting off candidates before we start. There's also a tool you can use which pulls out gender bias in language. So words like aggressive, champion, there are lots of words that are just are quite male-focused words that will put women off. So we have gone through all of our job ads and looked at that. And also just been very clear in the flexibility that's available, so thinking about things like hybrid working, part-time roles, etc. So yeah, starting at the very beginning, but then walking the walk with these things through the organisation. I think that lots of large companies have policies in place, but that women feel that if they were to apply, for example, for a flexible working agreement, it's going to set them back. So it's how can you as a leader be really vocal and visible about, it's okay for people to be going and doing the school run, male or female, or for us to make up our own hours within, a given week or month. So yeah, there's lots of things and lots of focus in big organisations like 3. Harder to drive change, and Smarty's small within 3, so easier for me to do this. But I think some structure that sits behind it and real sponsorship from the top is what's most important.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm also interested to explore whether or not it's appealing to work in the technology and telecoms industry for women. So I read a stat, I think it was from PwC, 27% of university students would consider, female university students would consider a career in technology and telecoms versus 62% for men. And that's a pretty depressing stat when you're trying to change it, because you've got to start with the new blood and so on. So I just wonder, what do you think the industry could do more to get over what I guess is a bad rep, effectively? So Mia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, like you said, about changing the way that we attract talent by changing the ads, making them more focused on both genders is one thing. Bringing in strong female leaders into the industry is another, because there are so many benefits from it as well, from a revenue perspective, and I know many are looking for that. How can we grow a better team? How can we get more revenue? And when we're talking about stats, we see that if we have a company with 0% female leaders on board level, if they suddenly become 30% leaders of females on board level, they're now making a 15% more revenue, are the studies showing. And it's not because, females are better. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that diversity is creating a different type of set of solving. And like you said, Martina, we are serving 100% of the community, but how can we do that if we only have such a low percent of females? And a really good example of that is that in 2014, there was a new health app brought out, which was amazing because it tracked everything, your heartbeat, your breathing, your this and that. But it didn't track menstruation, which, for 50% of the world's population is, something that happens quite often. So they missed that part, but that was because 80% of the people that created that app were male. So they missed a really crucial part, and they got a lot of shit for it as well. So that's why all the other apps have that feature. So.
Yeah, I think there's element of driving equity, so thinking about how we can over-index, so how can we push forward female role models, how can we really think about how to get to those positive outcomes for your organisation, is how to push harder for women or other minorities, which will help drive this change. So I think it's easy to kind of sit back and say, well, women can apply, women can succeed, but actually recognising that those barriers are there and taking proactive steps to break them down will essentially help us move forward.
Thank you. And I think what was quite telling in those stats that I read out earlier, sort of like 30% in the US, significantly less in other areas, is that regionality can play a massive part in that. We're all very fortunate. We live and work in Europe. I think even in Europe there are more progressive countries and less progressive countries. Martina, you're from Sweden, I think. I would think they are probably in the more progressive area. Do you want to sort of share a little bit about that, and then maybe we can throw to Mia, who does a lot of work with people who are in significantly less progressive environments. So,
this is my opinion, is that to drive like equality, like you need to focus a bit more on the men also, not only on the female, because if you're going to do change, you need to focus on everyone. And I think what Sweden have done is, when it comes to parental leave, we have a long parental leave, but we also have that the men have to take some part of it. So otherwise it gets burned in, so to say, which means that the standard in Sweden, and I think in our company, most men have 6 months of parental leave. So the female takes 6 months, and then the man takes 6 months. And that's when it makes a difference for both the female and the man. Because I think there's two ways here. Like if it's going to be equal, it can't be only the woman that does everything at home also. Then it becomes, you can't be a superwoman and do everything at once. But I think it's also a challenge where there's a lot of men that do want an equal relationship, but they can't get parental leave from their work, because then they will feel like they're not focusing on their career, and maybe they have it, but it will just be seen as not okay to take it in the end. And if you succeed of actually doing that equality, that actually benefits both parties. But I think that's the biggest change in Sweden, where workplaces are focusing on driving that change, because then we talk about equality and not doing beneficial stuff for women, but actually talking about equality and how to enable both parties to be part of that.
And I guess if you haven't got equality, you're reinforcing the bias immediately, right? Which is, well, mum's looking after the kids for 6 months and dad's doing it for 2 weeks or whatever. It doesn't really help in kind of training the new people in the world that that's not okay. So Mia, calling out what you're doing with Unconnected, which is incredible. So you've been focused very much on projects giving women access to technology and education. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's really important.
Absolutely. So for Unconnected, our focus is to connect 1 billion women and students to the internet. But before, and I will touch on that, but I think it was important to what we were saying here, that it's different looking at equity or equality in the gender workforce if you work in Sweden. I'm also from Sweden, so it's a coincidence that we both are up here. But also when I'm running teams in Malaysia, when I'm running teams in India, or when I'm running teams in Dubai, it's very different than as a young female running teams in Sweden or running teams in Australia. So to say that is a completely different way, and I can't expect everyone to adapt after me. I need to adapt after the team. So I learned that very early on from some mistakes that I did. But I also think, after seeing the projects that we're running on a global scale to connect women to the internet, that I get positively surprised every single time. An example is a project we launched in Mexico to connect indigenous women so they can sell their goods online, because the tourists didn't come there during COVID. We installed computers, we did digital training. We came back there a few months later, and they had set up, they've taken marketing courses online, they've taken finance courses online, they've completely transformed those villages, this group of women who suddenly got access to technology. And it's just sad to see that the digital divide and is so much, focused or is so overpowered by women not having access to technology.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if I may indulge myself just a little bit, I want to talk about a project that we're working on together as well, which is we're working in one of the more difficult areas, I won't name and shame, but one of the more difficult areas where women are not allowed to attend education.
Yep.
And we've been working to, again, through a sort of covert network almost, to try and get laptops and connectivity into the hands of secret schools which are happening in that area. And basically what's happened there is the regime change caused schooling to be banned for women, and some very brave women decided to set up schools and just effectively say, up yours to the regime, and progress. And it's a really exciting project to be involved in. So I think probably good time for a plug on Unconnected, if you want to quickly talk to the audience about how they can get involved, and then we'll take some questions from the audience.
No, but I think you guys should speak to me afterwards if you think that digital equality is something that's close to your heart, which you should, because you're at this conference, so you obviously like telecommunication. But I also, so do find me, I'm on LinkedIn, find my name, like Unconnected. But also, I want to give the industry, I want to end on a positive note as well. I think looking at the industry over the last few years, we do see more women in the industry. I've been attending these conferences now for 6-7 years, and I do get asked, less if I can fill up milk or if I can change toilet paper, which is good. They don't ask me that as often. I do still get, weird questions, especially after parties at MVNO Awards, so which is a bit distressing. So I do encourage everyone to stand up for your female colleagues. Stand up for yourself. If you see something, say something, because together that's how we're going to create a more gender diverse workforce in the telecom sector.
Well said. Yeah, very well said. Thank you. So do we have any questions, or actually I'd welcome contributions from the audience. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. Look at that, amazing. Right, so if we could get maybe the lady in the front there first, then we'll come to you straight after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Biji Kurt. I'm from Kongstar, which is an MVNO from Germany. So I think one question was, what can we do to force more equality in the telco industry? Maybe we could start with have some more female speakers on this stage also, and not only 90% male speakers over the 2 days, and only taking women on the stage when it's about, talking about equality. That's just a suggestion towards the organization to this Congress, maybe. And another thing, as we've been talking about, how we can force equality, or you have, let's say, mentioned some examples within your companies and everything. And what can we maybe do, like on an individual basis, to support each other more? And what have you maybe done in the past to support other women which have not been as fortunate or as privileged as you have been? And maybe you can also mention some examples. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
We actually had a discussion, like, why is it 3 women up here talking about equality? It would be nice to have some men in the discussion also, but it's, I think this has been a good discussion anyway, but I think it's a valid point. I'm having a keynote at 2:55, just you're welcome to listen in. No, but I think for me, one thing is I think we need to have more inspiration and the female that actually have positions to talk, to actually take room and space and not to be too humble, to actually position and to lead more with example of how it can be done and to inspire in general. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not a person that really wants the attention, but it's like, okay, now I have this role. If someone asks me to be in a panel, to be up on stage, then I'm saying yes. Because I think I get a lot of feedback also that it's inspiring from people that are looking at. So that's one thing I'm trying to do. And also if people just reach out, I take the coffee, and I try to connect people. But I think that's also what a lot of people have done to me, both female and men, to really, because I think if you as a woman take usage of the benefits of being a woman, because there are some benefits also, and I think sometimes we are a little bit too humble, I shouldn't do this, they asked me just because I'm a woman, and then we only get the negative side but don't get the upsides. So I think that's really to be more just bold and take more space.
Some examples that happen at 3, which haven't been set up by me, but I do think are really useful, are employee networks. So set up by the employees. So there's a sort of umbrella network called Women at 3, and then under their specific networks. So a network for people going through the menopause to just discuss and support each other there, and just feel part of something and bring that conversation to the core. There's a similar network for new and expecting mothers and parents and carers. So actually, I think in a way, it's for us to work out how to reach out and create those connections where we can help build each other up, and also using mentoring, I think, is a really powerful way that we can help each other. But I suppose it is just about that stepping up and realising if we don't do it, no one will. So it's almost like not waiting for that. But those things I've seen great connection and companionship come from at 3.
I just want to say I applaud your question. I thought it was great, but I don't.
and it was also extremely well observed, because I did the maths to work out what the bias percentage was on presenters, and it's 12% women. So I think we're making progress, but we're maybe not making progress fast enough. So it's a very.
But I also want to say, I think for this specific conference, I was positively seeing the focus of including more women in the discussions. The panels are still mostly male dominated, but I do see that the change of trying to do something different, because I've been, chanting for the conferences for the last few years, saying, this needs to change, we need to do something, and now we can see that there is a slight change coming, and for that I really applaud the conference for doing that.
I agree, we should embrace it. Can we go to the other lady there?
Hello, my name is Claire. I'm a sales manager at Oasis Smart SIM, eSIM solution provider. So my question for you is simple. Do you believe in having quotas for women at board level or executive committee level? Thank you.
I'll start, and I'll say no. I don't believe so. I believe that there is enough talented men and women out there that you should be able to create a gender diverse workforce without that.
And I'll say yes. I think that it's important to have targets to drive things forward in business. That's how we work. So for me, even just having those targets to focus the mind, and to focus those decision makers and boards, give a business person a target and they'll work towards it. So for me, I think it's useful as something to drive towards, and to make sure that we're having to drive that equity at every step through to try and drive through that change.
Perfect. Do you want to have the deciding
the
comment?
final vote?
I'm changing my mind every week on this question. So I think no, I'm really changing my mind about this every week. So that's the answer, I would say, on my side.
It sounds like there's no simple answer. Do we have any more questions or comments? If we do, okay, if we could go to the lady here at the front, and then we'll do you, sir.
Hi, I'm Ellen from BT Wholesale. I really appreciate everything you guys have been speaking about. So I recently launched a Women in Wholesale mentoring scheme at BT, and I'm on the DE&I board. Just to get people talking about it, having a safe space for anyone who identifies as a woman to have that professional development and support in the workplace. I often hear people who don't face systemic bias come to me and say, I can't relate, I don't really know what I can do to support. And I think there needs to be more onus on having allies, and people knowing, well, even if they don't have, they don't experience any of it, what can they do to support us? And I was just wondering what you think our like male counterparts in the room and the industry can do to, like you said, for example, even if it's at events, if you see something that you don't approve of, calling it out and supporting your women counterparts. So yeah, I just wanted to understand what you think everyone around us can kind of do to champion that message.
I think one of the first things for us to do is to make sure that everyone understands the benefits. So just picking up on what you said. So actually, again, we're all business people. So thinking about what are those benefits that having more equality in a workforce can drive through, and almost starting with those messages rather than here's why it's hard to be a woman or these are the difficulties. And I think as organisations, if we can start with those positive messages and then build through, the way that we train our leaders to support their people, thinking about diversity, inclusion and belonging at all levels. I think those are the most important ways. I sound like I'm a very numbers-focused person, don't I? But I actually think those outcomes and educating people on how driving the diverse outcomes can lead the business outcomes is a really positive way to start that change.
No, I think my co-founder Jonas is a great example of how you really can drive diversity in everyday operations. It's everything from we raised quite a lot of capital in our founding journey, and it's a lot of investment meetings. That's the next level of discussion here, where I'll tip, for example, specific questions always are targeting to him. And not me, and just for him to always then say, I'm annoyed now by you only looking at me, or you asked this to me, this is money. And so really challenging in all meetings and doing it face on, and really have the perspective in everything from recruiting to, because I think if it's only the women who challenge in the actual situation, then it will be our thing and not. And I think that has also inspired me to see stuff for what they are, and not just because you get so used to stuff and don't observe stuff over time. So for him to have that hat and challenge, I think that has both encouraged me a lot and helped in a lot of situations, but it's very motivating in this area also.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I'm working together with a guy called Andrew Atkinson, who's absolutely brilliant. He never takes any fights for me because, we don't see ourselves as victims because we're women. But he will call out things that I might not see, and he calls them out very clearly and make things very uncomfortable at times. But I think that's important. I think that's really important to have those people around you that believe in you as a professional in this industry, that doesn't believe in you as a female professional, but believe in you and for something that you have an expertise and a set of understanding of this industry that makes you belong here. And you need those people around you, whether they're male or female.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ellen.
Hi, I am Sol from Romóvil in Mexico. Congratulations for this panel, and specifically congratulations, Mia, for your labor in Unconnected ARC. I see that this could be a good opportunity for MVNOs actors to help to do some next steps to contribute in Unconnected ARC. If you could suggest us next steps or a way to work with you, I think it could be better to help more people and to make a better impact.
That's very nice. Thank you so much. So we're working with MVNOs globally at the moment. We're building ecosystem in countries where we bring together the telecommunication industry, we're bringing together the finance industry, we're bringing together insurance. Every industry that would benefit from connecting the bottom of the pyramid, we're bringing them together in big ecosystem where we're running large projects to connect schools and students. So if you as an MVNO or as a different company would like to get involved in these ecosystem that will benefit both revenue-wise and PR, but also it's the right thing to do, do ping me. I want to talk to you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So we're just about out of time. In fact, over time, I got shown my own big red time signal about 5 minutes ago, but I sort of thought it was important to have these questions. So thank you very much for your attention. We now go to a lunch break. Oh, yes, absolutely.